Good evening. I'm Spot On Weather meteorologist Matthew Euler, and welcome to the presentation Spot On Weather tonight. Things that make you go brrrr. And here's a little funny picture for you, for all you dog lovers out there, a little dog humor. You can see these two are bundled up quite well. I like some of the scarves here on the red scarf on the left, and look at that little foo-foo scarf on the right. Wow. Even the dogs got to bundle up with this forecast. And here we go right into it. And let's talk about some main ingredients again that are really coming together for a very cold period across the eastern United States, across the mid-Atlantic. All right, the first thing I'm going to show you is an updated Arctic oscillation forecast. And I know I've been showing this a lot recently in my videos. The red circled areas there, the one there on the left-hand image, bottom left there, that shows you a dropping or a more negative Arctic oscillation over time here as we head towards the latter half of January. And on the upper right-hand corner there, that red circled area there shows you all the ensemble forecasting members. Quite a few, at least the majority of them, are predicting a negative period of the Arctic oscillation, a dropping off of the Arctic oscillation. All right. Now, let's take a look at the North Atlantic oscillation forecast, the NAO. This can also come into play for creating cold and sometimes snowy situations along the mid-Atlantic up to the New England states along the East Coast. So what happens? First of all, let's start on the left-hand image there, showing you a slight drop towards the negative side on the North Atlantic oscillation, the NAO. So this is something we're going to have to watch really closely. The image on the right, that shows you a typical pattern with a negative North Atlantic oscillation, a negative NAO. You typically get a big blocking pattern up into Greenland, a big, huge upper level ridge in the atmosphere at the jet stream level. And then just to the west of that, over the Midwestern and Eastern U.S., you get this big dip, the big upper level trough in the jet stream, and that will result in a lot of cold air into the base of that long wave trough, and then typically it favors more storm development. And when you have that blocking Greenland high, the higher latitude blocking with a negative North Atlantic oscillation, you typically get a situation where when you have coastal East Coast storms, they don't really move out to sea very readily because of that blocking high. Low pressure systems, they're looking for the path of least resistance, and that path of least resistance for low pressure systems is anywhere seeking out lower pressure. So when you have this huge upper level high pressure system over the North Atlantic, that big blocking high, the coastal lows along the East Coast tend to stay closer to the coast, and that tends to make for major winter storms. So this is just something to keep an eye on. Moving ahead to the polar vortex update. We've talked a lot about the polar vortex, I'm sure, in the last few days. If you Google the polar vortex, you're going to have a lot of different articles. A lot of news media outlets are jumping on board and talking about the polar vortex. There was an article just the other day in the Washington Post by the Capital Weather Gang. They were talking about it, and there's just all kinds of articles out there now. The bottom line is the image here on the left shows the latest GFS polar vortex forecast. The image on the right is the Global Ensemble Forecasting System, or GEFS, on the right. In either case, the purple shading colors indicate below normal temperatures, and those are centered over anywhere from the upper Midwest to New England, all the way down into the eastern U.S., mid-Atlantic region. Okay, so the polar vortex is situated generally in the vicinity of Hudson Bay, Canada, and it does become more elongated. I've looked at the model runs the last couple days, and it becomes more elongated or stretched like a rubber band. The orientation can change, the shape can change with it. But just keep in mind that with the polar vortex in this position, it definitely favors reloading of Arctic air masses. You just think of the polar vortex as this huge upper level low pressure system, and on the back side of that extremely cold lobe of air known as the vortex, major shots of Arctic air come down from Canada, Sometimes you get the direct connection all the way from the Arctic itself, all the way straight down to the mid-latitudes. So this is going to be a major player in our weather for sure here at the latter half of January into February. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and I'm showing you some different charts tonight, kind of change things up a little bit. All right, I'm showing you the 500 millibar geopotential heights, and I'm showing you anomalies. An anomaly is something that's not normal. All right, and at 500 millibars, that's typically, I want you to think of that level as 18,000 feet above the ground in the atmosphere. So anytime you see blue shading, that indicates lower heights at 18,000 feet, lower than normal heights. And anywhere you see the orangish and the reddish colors, that indicates higher upper air heights, or higher than normal upper air heights. Okay, so whenever you see the blue areas here, that is synonymous with colder temperatures. Whenever you see the reddish orange colors, that generally indicates warmer than normal temperatures. Okay, so if you take a look at this, I'm showing you Arctic shot number 1, looking at the 18,000 foot upper air height anomalies. Okay, and I'm showing you this huge, the first shot here will be coming up on the 20th and 21st of January 2019. So just this upcoming weekend, we're going to get that first shot of Arctic air that hits the East Coast, extending all the way down from New England down into the southeast U.S. And we're going to have a lot of cold air as this upper level trough settles overhead. And you will feel this difference, especially if you live in the mid-Atlantic. This is a very strong Arctic front. Your temperatures are going to drop relatively quickly on very, very strong gusty north-northwest winds, bringing all that cold Arctic air into the area. Now, the one thing with this particular Arctic shot, it's not going to last long. We're looking at basically lasting coming in Sunday. Around midday, the Arctic cold front blows through the southeast Virginia area, and the temperature is going to drop like a rock. And we are expecting temperatures to drop all the way down to the lower 20s overnight, Sunday night into Monday morning, the 21st of January. And they're not going to rise a whole lot on the 21st of January. They're going to struggle. Even if there's sun, it's not going to matter. Strong northwest winds, strong colder air being transported into the area from the Arctic in the base of this deep, long wave trough. Okay. Arctic shot number 2. And again, with the polar vortex situated over Hudson Bay, over eastern Canada, like I mentioned, it's going to cause these Arctic air masses to pivot around and get basically shot down into the eastern United States. This is Arctic shot number 1. Here's Arctic shot number 2. So, especially for the mid-Atlantic region, we're looking at a warm-up after this initial quick-hitting shot. 20th, 21st, still be fairly cold on Tuesday the 22nd of January, but then by Wednesday the 23rd, Thursday the 24th, we do have a milder air mass coming in behind this Arctic shot number 1. Then Arctic shot number 2 hits, and this is generally going to be around the 25th of January 2019. I'm showing you an image on the left. These are your 18,000 foot upper air height anomalies. Again, the blue areas, just think of colder temperatures when you see the blue areas on these charts. Colder temperatures blue, warmer than normal temperatures in the reddish colors. So we have another upper level trough transporting much colder air into the eastern United States, into the mid-Atlantic, sometime around the 25th of January. So by the end of next week, we're going to have another interesting shot of cold Arctic air coming in to the area. We got upper level ridge and upper level height rises out in the western U.S. and that deep trough. Now, I want you to pay attention to this chart. I mean, you've got the 540 line is going to go all the way down towards the Gulf Coast. So this is quite a shot of Arctic air. This is the second shot. Third shot of Arctic air, the 29th to the 31st of January 2019. This image on the left is showing you Thursday, January 31st in the morning. The image on the right is showing you the evening of January 31st. And in general, we've got a upper level trough that's situated right into the eastern U.S. again. We still have those upper level heights that are much higher out in the western U.S. And so we expect this continual feed of cold Arctic air these reinforcing shots of cold Arctic air pivoting around the polar vortex, which is situated over eastern Canada. Look at some of these other charts that back up what's going to happen here. This is the climate forecasting system, version 2. This is your again your 18,000 foot geopotential height, your height anomalies, your upper air heights. And again, just think of the darker the blue shading, the colder the temperatures. So we got a huge chunk of blue all over the United States. The majority of the focus for the coldest air, as it pivots around that polar vortex over Hudson Bay, Canada, it's going to be focused into the Midwest, into the eastern U.S. It really is. Similar agreement amongst the models. The image on the left shows you the European weather model. The image on the right shows you the GFS, American GFS model. Bottom line is milder temperatures, upper level ridge, higher heights out west in the western U.S. That's where you're going to have the warmth, and it's going to be extremely cold here in the eastern United States. A little bit difference in the core or the deepest part of the coldest air between the European model on the left and the American GFS model on the right. You can see with the European model, the darkest blue shading is situated over Minnesota, Wisconsin, into upper Michigan, into the Midwestern more so, Midwestern U.S. The image on the right with the GFS, it wants to dig that trough out deeper and take it all the way down to Florida. Yes, Florida. Could actually get really, really cold with these repetitive shots of Arctic air coming straight down out of Canada around that polar vortex. And this, I just had to get this and show you this. This is an impressive upper level pattern. What goes up must come down, and in the left-hand image, I'm showing you the jet stream image. So that's the image on the left is the 30,000 foot winds. So anywhere where you see the yellow colors or the orange colors, that indicates higher wind speeds associated with the core of the polar front jet stream. The image on the right shows you a lot of nice colors. All I'm showing you on the right-hand image there is the temperatures at 5,000 feet above the ground. The purple shadings on the right-hand image, the blue shadings, those yellow shadings, those red shadings, all of that is extremely cold air. Yellow being the coldest at negative 40 degrees Celsius. So that's over the Hudson Bay area right beneath the polar vortex itself, the yellow colors on the right-hand image. You can see this is late January. These are late January maps. Okay, and this is just showing you how extremely cold the air is. Those are, again, purples, reds, yellows, oranges on the right-hand image show you very, very cold temperatures at 5,000 feet. Which equates, air is denser and colder, so it's going to sink, and so that also equates to the kind of temperature, we're going to be feeling these extreme cold temperatures coming up in the longer range in late January. And the image on the left shows you, again, the jet stream winds. Yellowish colors indicate stronger jet stream winds blowing. The image there on the left, the center point of the image on the left, the upper center point, shows you where the polar vortex is located. You got strong upper level ridge into Alaska, into western Canada, and whatever goes up, it's going to dislodge all that cold Arctic air down into the base of this long wave trough. So what goes up must come down. So just again, this is an incredible looking pattern. I saw this morning. I could not believe it. If you're looking for some cold temperatures in the United States, that image on the left is the type of jet stream pattern you want. Huge upper level ridge into Alaska, into western Canada, and it just is tremendously deep trough, upper level trough there into the upper Midwest, into the eastern U.S. Here is the climate forecast system temperature departures, what we're expecting for temperature departures from normal. Just keep in mind that the green colors, the white colors, so green and white and purple, those indicate your greatest, your coldest temperature departures. Okay. So I do have images on the right hands of each of these diagrams. But if you look at the purple shading, for example, that's -8 to -11 degrees Fahrenheit below normal. The lighter white color is about 7 degrees below the normal high temperature. The purple shade, or the green shading, is anywhere from -4 to -6 degrees Fahrenheit below normal. I was looking at some charts earlier today. There's potential for this to even be colder than what we're indicating right here. All right. Here is the NOAA. This is the NOAA forecast from January 26th to February 8th. It's their 3 to 4 week outlook, the temperature outlook. And you can see where the blues are. Blues are generally going to be around the Mississippi River east to the East Coast, and even all the way down to the deep south. All the way down to the Gulf Coast, all the way down to the Florida Peninsula. You're going to be much chillier than normal down there. But yeah, we're looking at the warmest temperatures by the orangish shading, the above normal temperatures being west of the Mississippi River, out towards the west coast of the U.S., and up into Alaska, where you get that huge upper level ridge. So this is the official outlook from NOAA. And I also wanted to throw in this presentation tonight, I look at this left-hand image, and this left-hand image was the upper level winds at 18,000 feet last year in early January. Why am I showing this? Because we had the similar pattern in place. The image on the right shows you the forecast for January 26th. The image on the left was last year in early January. Now, last year in early January, there was a tremendous winter storm that went up the East Coast. This type of pattern on the left, that image where you have strong northwesterly winds, the polar front jet stream made a tremendous, carved out a tremendous trough off the East Coast. This resulted in snows in Savannah, Georgia, Charleston, South Carolina, and then snow really piled up in the mid-Atlantic. There were blizzard warnings in Southeast Virginia. We did a report from that storm last year. If you want to check it out on in the video archive, where I was doing some reporting from that major winter storms that hit the Hampton Roads area last January early. But this pattern was very similar to the pattern we're going into, and that is why I keep harping on this. That it's just a really ripe pattern for a really good winter storm along the eastern U.S. coast. It really is. And I'm taking past patterns, the image on the left, showing you a huge upper ridge on the left there, the image, a huge upper level ridge in western Canada, and a very deep trough of low pressure or lower heights into the eastern United States. The image on the right shows the forecast according to the GFS model for January 26th. So to me, I'm still confident that I really believe we're going to have an active storm pattern along the East Coast. Now, to this point, we've seen a lot of storms generally tend to go take an inside route and go either into the Midwestern U.S., and when they go into the Midwestern U.S., or even if they go through the Appalachian Mountains to the west of the coast, of the East Coast, they remain west of the East Coast. That tends to drag those warm southerly winds up ahead of them. And, that's happening this weekend. We may see a brief changeover to snow on Sunday, the 20th of January, after the Arctic front blows through. But it's not favorable because most of the energy goes up to New England, right? Because we had a storm track that generally is unfavorable. We have the precipitation in place across southeast Virginia in the warm sector of the cyclone. So that means we get strong southerly winds, temperatures rise, and there's very little winter weather for us because by the time the cold air arrives, the moisture is off the coast. But this is a very favorable pattern, and this is exactly why I'm showing this tonight to all you viewers out there, all watching the video. And with that, I will say, here's your active storm track. Now, this is the GFS model. It's only one model. And, I'm sure things are going to change as far as timing of possible coastal storms coming up the East Coast. But you get these deep troughs, very cold, drag this Arctic air down on the backside of the polar vortex, and then you get a baroclinic zone. What is a baroclinic zone? It's just a boundary between the warmer water over the Gulf Stream current, over the western Atlantic, and much colder Arctic air to the northwest over the eastern U.S., over the land. And wherever you get that strong temperature contrast, that's where storms like to form along that particular boundary where you get the strongest temperature difference. And so this, to me, looks really favorable. There's been hints in the models, especially today, sometime around the 24th of January into the 25th of January, we could be looking at a coastal low developing in which there would be some rain along the immediate coast, but as the colder Arctic air works its way in from the northwest, that rain will change over to accumulating snow. So this is just something to keep an eye on. Look, this is what's happened in the past on the image on the left. That was the upper air pattern in early January last year, January 2018. I will tell you this, and I've seen it. Hampton Roads got up to 10 inches of snow last January based on that pattern on the left. And it's very similar to the forecasted pattern on the right. So there's a lot of, it just really raises my weather senses here, if you want to call them weather senses, about a possible coastal storm development. And not just one, but maybe another after this, towards the last few days of January. And the timing again is going to change. It's going to be based off how deep the long wave trough gets. It's going to be based on how much cold air you have coming in to the east coast at the time. Wanted to throw in this. This is the 12Z. This was the midday European model run. This is for Norfolk, Virginia. Look at this. So, we're going to have a much milder Friday, Saturday. January 18th, 19th. Temperatures start getting up. Their high temperatures into the mid-50s. Then they go to the upper 50s on Sunday, January 20th, before the Arctic cold front moves through the area and really drops them like a rock. Look at your drop-off in temperature. 57 for a high on January 20th for Norfolk. 25 degrees. I think that might be a little too cold. It's probably going to be closer to 30 degrees, but nonetheless, we have low temperatures down around 17, around 21 degrees. And then you look at this, Wednesday, January 23rd, we're right back up to 54 degrees for a high. And then you start seeing less of a transition period where you're going from extreme cold to a quick rebound in temperatures. Look at from basically the 25th of January on this forecast for the European, January 25th all the way to January 31st, look at the highs. More consistent and persistent cold, that's what we're expecting. And there will be some days in here which are even colder based on these quick-hitting Arctic shots that are embedded within the cold long wave trough, that long wave cold pattern. So 41 degrees on January 25th for high, 37 degrees January 26th, only 39 January 27th, 37 on Monday, January 28th, 41, Tuesday, January 29th, Wednesday, January 30th, 38, and then there's that quick hitting shot of extremely cold air, 33 degrees for high on January 31st. So that's what we're expecting. We're expecting a little bit of volatility. These temperature swings are going to kind of be all over the place initially, but then after especially going into next weekend, that's the weekend of the 26th and 27th of January, that's when we expect the colder temperatures to be a little bit more persistent. And I just wanted to show you what kind of cold we could be looking at in Hampton Roads area. So these are my final thoughts tonight in the video. Waves of Arctic cold will invade the eastern United States. And that's going to start this Monday, January 21st. These waves of cold air will continue to pivot around the polar vortex, which is situated over eastern Canada, right there in the vicinity of Hudson Bay. This is the polar vortex. A lot of research has been done. I mentioned Dr. Judah Cohen in the past. He's done amazing research. I will tell you this, from his research, Dr. Cohen and others, they have found that you get the strong stratospheric warming, you get the polar vortex to weaken, gets displaced, takes all the cold air off the poles, Arctic air comes down from the poles, the Arctic warms up, and what happens is the cold lasts on the order of 3 to 5 weeks. So this is not something that we're just going to see quickly and it's gone. This is something that we can easily see working its way all the way into mid-February. All right, from late January to mid-February. Persistent cold will dominate the eastern U.S. through February. That's what the research has shown with these stratospheric warming events. Europe and the eastern United States are favored for colder periods on the order of 3 to 5 weeks, sometimes longer. So we do expect repetitive Arctic waves, Arctic shots of cold air over the period, especially starting Monday, January 21st through February 15th. We're expecting periods of extremely cold Arctic air that's going to be embedded within that colder pattern. So we get these extremely cold Arctic air masses coming down we can have high temperatures in the lower 30s in southeast Virginia, lows in the teens and the lower 20s. Pretty impressive cold, especially considering the average high temperature this time of year is 48 degrees Fahrenheit. All right. Models are in generally good agreement on this wintry pattern. If I go back here, that's why I brought these images up here, just to show you how the European and the GFS are pretty much in sync. We see a deep long wave trough across the eastern U.S., a stronger upper level ridge across the west coast into western Canada, and that is the recipe for a very cold pattern in the east. Okay? And then storms forming in the Arctic air are only going to increase the likelihood of winter storms for the middle Atlantic region. So we'll need to continue to be watching this closely for significant winter storms and possible impacts. A lot of it is timing. Timing with where the Arctic air is and in relation to the type of storm track that we need for snow in southeast Virginia. We just haven't seen that this winter to this point. There's been a lot of Midwestern lows that have moved right up to the Midwest, and they've buried the Midwest. St. Louis, Missouri, last weekend is a prime example. All right. There's also been other storm systems that have stayed west of the East Coast. We haven't had a whole lot of coastal lows, but with this pattern, I will tell you again, this is the pattern you want if you want to develop some sort of coastal lows going up the East Coast. All right, that wraps things up tonight. Spot on weather on our video, things that make you go brrrr. We hope you enjoy this presentation. I definitely appreciate your viewership, and I thank you so much for subscribing to our channel. Our numbers are going up, and I do greatly appreciate that. I really love sharing the joy of weather with all of you. If you would like, you're more than welcome to, I'll throw that up here in the next video. But you're more than welcome to send me any videos you may have, or maybe some cool pictures, weather pictures you want to share with us. I'll be glad to throw that up here on the videos if you want to throw those in there. All right, that wraps things up tonight. Spot on weather. Big changes coming up in the weather pattern around the 20th, Sunday the 20th and the 21st. Very cold air hits the eastern U.S., and that really starts things, a little bit of a mild warm-up after that, and then the more persistent cold settles in after that. All right. I wish everybody a great, pleasant Thursday evening. We're spot on weather. If we're not spot on, we're not doing it right. Have a great evening, everyone.